binomial expansion. Let's have a look at this exam question. So we have expand 1 over 3x divided by the square root of 1 minus 2x in ascending order of x up to and including the term of x squared. So that's where we need to stop and state the range of x for which the expansion is valid. So that would be the very last step. So from the formula booklet, you will need this formula for the binomial expansion. This is our question. So the first thing I would be thinking about doing is rewriting this bottom part in terms of powers, okay? We can't deal with fractions at the moment. So 1 plus 3x is not going to change. 1 minus 2x will stay the same. Remembering the square root can be denoted by the power of a half. And when I take it up, or reciprocal, you're thinking about the opposite, which would be minus a half, okay? Now this first bracket is fine, I don't need to do anything to that because it's a power of 1, we just don't tend to write the 1. This part here is the bit I need to think about doing the binomial expansion part on, which is this part here, okay? So we'll apply this formula to this part of our bracket, okay? So if we write this down, I'm going to do it underneath here. So I've got therefore 1 minus 2x, the power of minus a half, will be equal to 1 plus minus a half, which is our n. If you want to go back to this formula all the time, that's our value of n. And then you have x, which is minus 2x in this case, instead of just x on its own. That's our first term. Plus, next term will be this part here, okay? So we've got minus a half, then minus 3 over 2, which is n minus 1, isn't it? So minus a half minus 1 will produce minus 3 over 2. If you're not sure where that's come from, make a little note for yourself above it. That's the n and that's the n minus 1. Now, instead of writing this as a fraction, this divided by 2, I'm going to write that as a power of a half, or there. I'm going to write it as a half instead of dividing by 2. And then we have x squared, so minus 2x is our term for x, and it's squared. Now, I don't need to go any further. It asks me to stop at the x squared value. I just need to sort out my brackets a little bit, okay? So if we go underneath, I'm going to have 1 plus, so I've got minus a half multiplied by minus 2, so that produces 1, positive 1. So you're just left with positive 1x, or just x on its own if you don't want to write the 1 in front. Next bit I need to sort out are all of these bits here, okay? So again, you can use your calculator. So you've got minus a half multiplied by a half multiplied by minus 3 over 2. That does produce positive 3 over 2, and then we're left with x squared. I don't need to go any further because it asks me to stop at the x squared value. So we can now say my binomial expansion of, if I go back to my question, this is going to look as follows. So we've got our first bracket, which is going to stay exactly the same. 1 plus 3x, I didn't need to do anything to that. And instead of that square root of 1 minus 2x, we can write our binomial expansion. So we've got 1 plus x plus 3 over 2 x squared. And you can put the plus 3 dots or 4 dots, 3 after it, which implies you understand that there's more that comes after. We don't have to work that out. And now we need to expand these brackets together, okay? We need to think about the expansion and making sure we get one list of answers. So we're multiplying everything in the first bracket by everything that is in the second bracket. So I'd end up with 1 plus x plus 3 over 2x squared plus 3x plus 3x squared plus, and I don't need to go any further. I would end up with 9 over 4x cubed, but I don't need to go any further. It's asked for x squared terms only. That's my limit. So I can stop and now just collect anything together that needs to be collected. So I've got 1 plus 4x, and then plus 9 over 2 x squared, and I can put my plus dot after it, so I understand that there are more things that come after, but I don't need to worry about working them out. I would stick to, try and do, sorry, I've done more than 3. Stick to 3 dots after it. That's typically what we expect to see. Now, the valid part, okay, we need to think about, if we go back to our question, this x part here is the bit we need to look at. We need to think about taking a modulus of that. So let me just write that down so you understand what that looks like. So I'm taking the modulus of the x part of that fraction, so minus 2x in the modulus. Now when we take a modulus of anything, it automatically becomes positive, okay? And they're telling us it has to be less than 1. So we're thinking about the modulus of x would have to be less than a half. And we ignore the minus when we're introducing this concept of modulus. So it's valid for anything less than a half.